Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a review of Paper Tales, a lightning fast drafting game that we just got a chance to play over the last few days.
Yeah, despite what you guys may think, we don't always get all of our games for free. Actually,
we
went out and bought this one from France, of all things, because I heard good things about it. And actually, it's really cool. It's a drafting game, and it takes place over 4 rounds. 30 minutes to play the game.
Yeah, it is, like I said, this is a very fast game.
So, let's talk about the components. There's not a whole lot of stuff here. You have money, which you'll be using to be able to buy people into your tableau. You have aging tokens. What's cool about this game is that the units that you bring into play aren't going to be there for a whole lot of time.
No.
They will age from round to round, and once they have a specific number of aging tokens on them, they're removed, and they're going to have to be replaced with new cards. You have a board in the center, which is going to mark the 4 different rounds of the game, the way you're going to draft, either to the left or the right, and your legend points, which you'll be trying to get through the course of the game. Each player is also going to have a stack of 5 buildings. These buildings are double-sided. You have a level 1 and a level 2. Players are going to be wanting to build these buildings into their tableau because they give them legend points at the end of the game, and they also give them ongoing benefits.
Yeah, also, Jeremy mentioned a giant stack of cards, and this is really what this game is built around for sure. And there's a incredible variety of them, beautiful sort of like paper cutout-esque artwork. And we can talk a little bit about the anatomy of a card.
Yeah.
Every card is going to be different in many, many ways, but in many cases the same. So at the very top corner here is going to be a cost that's going to, something you have to pay in money when you reveal your cards. Then, of course, there's going to be this strength. One of the big key elements of this game is there's combat.
Yeah.
Much like Seven Wonders in a way, you're going to be combating the people to your left and your right with some of the cards in your team or tableau. This value right here is the strength that those people are going to contribute to that fight. And then at the bottom, you're going to have a variety of different things. Basically, their powers. This one was going to give me money during the income phase. The really cool thing about this section of the card is each of the phases of the game has an icon associated with them, so you can very quickly learn the different phases of the game and when each card is going to trigger.
Absolutely. So, to start the game, each player is going to get $3. They're going to place that in front of them. They're going to take all 5 of their buildings and kind of just put them off to the side because they have to construct those before they can be used. And then you go through the phases. Everything in this game is done simultaneously. That's why the speed of the game is so quick. It's 30 minutes to play, and that is exactly right. You're in and out of this game quickly. The very first phase of the game is the drafting phase. It's called recruitment. Each player at the table is going to draw 5 cards into their hand. They're going to pick one of those cards and place it face down in front of them, and they're going to pass those cards to the left or the right, depending upon what round. You're going to do this until each player has 5 new cards. That's the end of the phase. You've basically drafted the units that you may possibly want to bring into play during phase 2, which is deployment.
Yeah, and you have to take a few things into consideration because in deployment, you're going to be placing 4 and potentially later in the game, more than 4 cards in front of you face down. When those are going to be revealed, which is in the next phase, you have to pay for them, so you want to take that into consideration. The other thing is, like I said earlier, with combat, you're going to want to put those characters in the front because during combat, only the characters in the front will participate. So you might want to put some of the characters that give you some of your resources in the back.
Yeah, you're going to notice if you look at the board here, we have kind of a game in progress to show you what your tableau is going to look like. It is a 2x2 grid. During this deployment phase, say this is what I had in front of us, and I had 5 other cards that I wanted to play. During this phase, I can replace cards. I can shift cards around. I can completely remove cards if I wish. And I'm going to play these cards during the deployment phase face down, so no one knows what I'm playing. You have no idea what my strength is, what my abilities are going to be for that round. Any card that you're placed, like we said, simply goes to the discard pile. And it's not until the end of the second round that each player is going to reveal those cards. Now, what's interesting here is you have to pay for those cards right then from the money that you have. If you don't have the ability to pay for them, those cards also get discarded.
Yeah, so you can do that as a bit of a bluff to some degree because of the draft, people are going to have a sense for some of the cards you might have.
Yeah.
So they might be preparing for that, and then you could just basically discard it instead.
One of the other things that you can do during this phase is you are allowed to carry over 1 and 1 card only to the next round. You simply take that card that you may want to summon on a future round and place it on top of your game turn summary card. That means it reserves it for you for the next round. Once each player pays for the cards and reveals them, they're simply going to flip them face up. And then you go to the war phase. The war phase is extremely simple. you're going to look at your front 2 cards. These are the only ones typically that can do combat. There are some cards that if they're in the back row will allow you to add their strength into combat. But you're simply going to look at the strength of the cards that you have. Some of them may have modifiers during phase 3. You have to look at those cards to make sure you understand. And then you're going to look at the player to your left and your right and determine your strength value compared to theirs. If you beat them, you get 3 legendary points.
Right.
If you tie them, both players get 3 legendary points. So it's always possible in a multiplayer game to get 6 points at most from beating the player to your left and the player to your right.
Yeah, you're typically going to get anywhere from 0 to 3 to 6 points during war. And like Jeremy said, there's a lot of cards here that can trigger different things. I have one right here, the Commander. During war, I'm going to get an extra point for each war won. So if I happen to win both, I'll get the 6 points plus another 2.
Once you're done with war, you go over to phase 4. Every player at the table is always going to collect $2. That will help them summon things in a future round. However, there's a lot of different cards in the game that will give you extra income. For instance, my blacksmith will give you $1 extra during phase 4. A lot of the buildings will modify war, they'll modify your income, they'll modify different steps within the game. So you have to make sure you read your cards and understand how much money you're going to be able to have for the next round. Then you have phase 5. This is construction. Each player is allowed to either construct one or upgrade one of their buildings. The cool thing about this is you'll notice there's no resources. We didn't talk about resources in the game because the cards themselves contain the resources. For instance, my cave spirit here has a gem. There's 3 different types of resources in the game. There's meat, there's gems, and then there's wood.
Right.
And you're going to be using these resources round after round to either build a building from your hand of cards or to upgrade a previously built building.
Right, and some of those resources will come into play even to modify some of the other cards. You might have a creature that has a higher attack value for all of the meat that you have on your tableau in that round.
So to talk a little bit more about the buildings, you'll see on the left-hand side, this is the cost to place a level 1 building, and then the cost to place a level 2 building. You can build it directly to the side 2 if you wish, but you have to pay both the level 1 and the level 2 cost. You just take that building, you'd place it in front of you. These buildings will give you ongoing benefits. They'll also give you legendary points at the end of the game. And then any level 2 building, if you build any one through the course of the game, will open up a 5th slot for you in the front row, which means you're going to have higher attack value. Now, one of the things I need to mention during the construction phase is your first building only costs the resources that you're choosing to bring into it. However, each one after that costs a land tax. So if I have one building, I just pay the resources. My second building is going to be the resources of this building plus $2,
right,
and then plus $4, and then plus $6. So the more buildings you have, the more money you're going to have to be expending.
Yeah, and if you don't have a lot of money, it really forces you to kind of go down certain paths, because these buildings, like Jeremy said, have ongoing effects so that you can sort of play a different type of game than the person next to you.
Aging tokens. This is the last phase of the game. Each unit that you have in front of you is going to collect one of those aging tokens that you saw, and you place it on each one of your units. If you would ever, during the 6th phase on a future round, place a second aging token on there, that card will get removed. And it's only during the 6th phase. So there's times in the game where you're going to be placing multiple aging tokens, maybe during war, maybe during income, that will give you benefits for some reason, but you know that that unit, since it has 2 or more on there, it's going to get removed during the aging step.
Yeah, this really brings in a lot of different options as you're playing this game and how you can score your points. Like Jeremy said earlier, you age these things, and by that we don't mean over a long period of time. At most, these guys are going to be out there for 2 rounds, except in some special circumstances.
Yeah.
The other thing Jeremy just mentioned, you might put aging tokens. I had a character the other night when we played that allowed me to put aging tokens on a bunch of extra characters. There's another character that scores points when those characters die for every aging token on them.
Yeah.
So in one round, I was basically able to go to Valhalla in a way.
Yeah.
All of my characters died that round, but I scored something like 10 points, which was a huge sweep. Now, with that said, I had to have money to deploy new characters the next time.
Yeah.
But it's a different give and take for sure.
So you're going to do this 4 rounds in a row, and the player with the most victory points at the end wins. You're going to calculate all the things that you've collected through the course of the game, plus any of the buildings that you've built. Buildings, level 1 side buildings are worth 1 legendary point, and level 2 buildings are worth 3 legendary points. So this game is all about combinations, figuring out the best combinations for your cards, when to summon them, how to get them to interact with each other, and then drafting properly for that.
Yeah, it's one of those games for sure, too, similar to Fantasy Realms, some other ones where you have to really learn these cards.
Absolutely.
So the good news is, though, when you're playing a game that has a long play time like that, it can be a bit of a drag.
Yeah.
Because this plays so fast, you can get to know the cards pretty quickly, but at the same time, even if you don't, after one very quick play of 30 minutes, you're pretty much ready to go with all the experience you need to play.
It almost feels like it plays too quickly at times. I mean, you and I are both the type of people that like to build tableaus in front of us.
And think about it.
And have them interact round after round. This gets you to think in a different way. You really have to consider the short game, what you're going to do this round, and how that's going to key into what you're going to draft in the next round, which is interesting. It's just as interesting as building a giant tableau in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that appeals to me. As a gamer myself, in terms of my skills, those longer-term planning games are where
Easier to manage.
Well, that's where I struggle, though, personally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I'm looking at the short-term goals is where I excel. And this one feels a little bit more short-term goal-oriented because you're not going to have these guys all game. There's no card you're going to put down that usually really pays off in the end. Although there was one called the Relic.
That stayed out there permanently?
If you could get it in the game, it will never die, and you could just load up with aging tokens on it and score for the aging
That's the other great thing about the game. As we said, it really gears around combining different cards together and finding out those mixes, but there's so many unique cards in the game, too. I mean, at most, you're going to have 3 copies of the same card, but a lot of these are unique cards that you're only going to have 1 in here. So you have to draft according to that as well, because it could be a very powerful ability, but knowing that it's going to age, it's going to probably wear out unless you get something else that can keep it to stay in.
It definitely, they're not all unique cards, but with that said, in playing this game, it feels like they're mostly unique cards.
Yeah.
You don't see, it's not a deck of cards where, oh, it's another one of those cards. You see a few, but it really feels largely like a lot of different cards that you're playing with.
Very cool game. Again, this is from Catch Up Games, the same designer that did Welcome to the Dungeon and Welcome Back to the Dungeon from Yellow Games, a game that I enjoyed quite a bit. So if you guys have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.